Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're just doing a quick voice check before we make the official start. So if you can hear us okay and you can see the chat or questions tab, please just type out a yes or okay, and then we know everyone can hear us okay. Thank you. And then we'll make the official start in just a few moments. Thanks very much. Yeah, it seems as though plenty of people have said they can hear okay, so that's good news. So, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our C&Gs Domestic Experience Work Route webinar. We're presenting this from different locations, so please excuse any unwanted background noise or any potential delay in slides as we're handing over to each other. Today's hosts are myself, David Pye, Lead Technical Advisor, and I'm joined by Bill Lockyer of the NET. So a little bit more from Bill in a short while.
Yeah, good morning.
So this webinar will cover the domestic experience worker route, and although we aim to answer wider questions at the end if possible, please make a note of the contact details on the screen. If you have any specific support requirements or questions surrounding BSE, please email myself or my colleagues Rob and Salim, and we can arrange a dedicated call, possibly a Teams or a visit. So regarding the controls as we work through the webinar, you should see a panel on the side of your screen. You'll see a questions tab, which is where you can type your questions. A chat tab, where you can use if you're having any issues with the platform. And a handout section, where you should find a copy of the presentation, which you can download. If anyone is having problems with audio, if it's in or out, if you go to the audio tab on the right hand of the screen, sometimes you can make adjustments or log out and log back in. So if you get any messages from people who are struggling, then please give them that advice. But there's a lot to get through, so we'll make a start. So here's the agenda. So the welcome and introductions we've covered. We'll then look at the domestic electrician experience worker route. So we'll talk you through the actual full routes, and then that includes several stages. We'll take a little peep at the logbook that we've created, and then kindly Bill will take us through some of the AM2 overview, and then we'll end with some of our support materials and an opportunity, hopefully, to answer all your questions. So hopefully that's the agenda you were hoping to get from this session. So let's make a start. I'll turn off the camera for now so you can see the full presentation. Okay, so that should go in a moment. So the level 3 electrotechnical in dwellings experience worker qualification. But first of all, the process and the qualification is only part of the full process. And I think this graphic really helps explain that process in full. If you've been delivering experience worker routes before, you'll be familiar with this graphic on the screen. But if not, it's probably quite new. So it takes you through the stages. So if we have a look, so the top one there, before you start, check your eligibility. So this is excellent advice for a prospective learner who feels that this is a suitable route for them. So at first, the learner or yourselves will need to check that they have a level 2 electrical technical qualification. And there's a list of these in the skill scan. The learner will also require at least 3 years experience working as a domestic electrician. So that doesn't include any training or any courses that they may be on or have run before. This is 3 years working as a domestic electrician. Following that, if we feel that the learner at this stage is suitable, we can complete the skills scan. And that will give more detailed information regarding the requirements and the breadth of the skills required to meet the requirements of this route. After that skill scan, There'll then be a verification of eligibility. So the training provider will have a look at the qualifications, the experience, and confirm that knowledge through a recorded and/or documented discussion. So there's a discussion around the skill scan and the prior achievements and other qualifications. At that time, if that learner is suitable, it's then that they will enter the qualification. So the experienced worker qualification includes the on-site units, which we'll have a look at in a moment, and also in terms of C&Gs, our 2391 and our 2382 wiring rigs. But we'll cover those in a bit more detail in a moment. Once a learner has successfully completed those qualifications, then we'll move on to the AM2 ED, so the experienced domestic AM2. And at that point, when they've achieved that and everything before it, then they've completed. So hopefully that makes sense as a process. I think it's a nice graphic that helps explain that to providers and to prospective learners.
David, sorry to interrupt you, but there's just had a message come through that some can't see the presentation, and it's gone off my screen as well.
Ah, right, okay. That's apologies for that. Let me check that. I will bring that back up. Okay. So have we got the presentation back?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Excellent, thank you for that. Sometimes there are some gremlins in the system and we lose it, so apologies and thanks for reminding me about that, Bill. So what I'll do then is I will just bring up the previous slide then, in case people couldn't see that slide. So there are the stages in the process that I've spoken through, and there are links on this presentation to those. Just close that across. To those stages that I spoke through. But what we're going to do on the slideshow, what we have is a little bit further detail on each of those stages. So if you did miss out there, hopefully we can pick it up on the next stages. So hopefully you can see the next slide titled Level 3 Electrotechnical in Dwellings Experienced Worker Qualification, the 2347. And I think this section sort of helps confirm some of the requirements. So the qualification is designed solely for those persons who are or have been working in the electrical industry, practicing as an electrician for a minimum of 3 years, and who can demonstrate their technical knowledge, performance and competence to industry standards at level 3 and would like to gain a formal qualification. So the idea is they're operating at that level but don't have the formal qualification to demonstrate that. And this is about demonstrating and showing, having evidence that they're operating at that level. So the skill scan, which designed by TESP, is available on their website, but also hosted on our website, as you can see from the previous slide. So the idea is the candidate would have access to this and would complete their own skill scan. They will be checked by the centre then against that skill scan, which you do through the discussion. So it's important that the learner is honest and accurate as they possibly can be as they complete that. And that will come out of the discussion with the candidate. If there are gaps, it may be that they're operating at a very high level, they are very experienced, but there's some bits of gaps in knowledge that will be quite normal. Then you could put together a small little training package or give them advice on how they could improve those skills so they do become eligible to move on to the next stage. So still on step 1, the relatively easy check is that they hold a relevant level 2 qualification, and there is a table within this document which you will have to check against and you will be able to tick off. And if the learner can do that themselves as they're looking at the skill scan, if they have any gaps, then they know that at this stage they're not eligible to continue with this experienced worker route. Step 2, so completing the document. As you can see at the bottom of the document there from this snip, it refers to both the knowledge and the experience. And there's 4 columns: limited, adequate, extensive, or unsure. So the candidate may look at that and think, well, I'm not really sure what they're aiming at. I might have knowledge in that, but what does it mean that they've put? So through the discussion, you could explain, oh, this means documenting risk, completing risk assessments, and you give it a bit more depth, and they might say, oh, yes, I do know what you mean now. Yeah, I've done that, and I've referred to this, and I've referred to that. They're the type of things that will come out of a very valuable and good discussion. And then background form, again, relatively straightforward for most people. Although if a learner's struggling with some of this, you could have a discussion with the candidate and help them fill it in. But it should be self-explanatory. You know, it's about getting evidence of the work history and the prior experience. So in your discussion, once you've had a glance at this, if they've got 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, you can help build that into your discussion. It just adds value to the skill scan as well. There's just another snip from the background form, so work history details, and you can see the type of things that the candidate will have to include on this document. Again, these are downloadable from our website and from TESP, so it's relatively straightforward to download or send links to prospective candidates, and they can have a read through and start to familiarise themselves and yourselves with this document. So a bit more detail now on the actual qualification. You'll see a list there of units, and they are simply the same units as in the apprenticeship, because we want to demonstrate the same skills levels and knowledge and skills across the apprenticeship and the experienced work route. So these are what we typically call the on-site units. So we have those 5 mandatory units, and they'll be demonstrated the same way as an apprentice would through a workplace logbook. And again, these are on our website, so you can download the workplace logbook, but it looks something like you can see on the screen now. So we've included some snips. So again, if you've been using our documents for some time now, you'll be familiar with the type of logbooks that we have. It's a mixture of documents that learners fill in as evidence, some work details, some tick boxes, but also opportunities to demonstrate and write the type of work that they're doing. So it's a bit of a mix. What you don't want is all tick boxes, because it just becomes a fast ticking exercise if you're not careful, and you don't want just writing for writing's sake. So we've worked hard to try and get the balance right, to get the correct amount of evidence and value from and information from these documents. On the very first snip on the left hand side, you'll see professional discussion, and in brackets, confirmation of evidence. So very often a learner will bring in some evidence, and there'll be parts of it will be strong, and there'll be other sections you think maybe a bit weak, or you don't quite know what they've been driving at with that. Well, that's your opportunity to sit down with the candidate, have a discussion, and confirm what they've put to you. So they may then describe, this is what I was getting at when I wrote that. This is what that means. So you can have that discussion, and if you think it's valid, then you can support that evidence. And obviously, if not, if you think it's not demonstrating or meeting the criteria sufficiently, you can provide some feedback, and the learner can go back to work and then complete some more evidence at another time and bring it back in. So there's quite a lot of documents, but hopefully very supportive and very guiding for yourselves and for the candidates. So just one thing to note on the logbook when you download it, it's a shared logbook with the apprenticeship. However, in the experienced work route, there is one extra learning outcome on Unit 109. The purpose of the additional outcome is to ensure ourselves that the candidate has the correct level of knowledge, because if they come through a different route, it's just an extra belt and braces to ensure that they have the correct level of knowledge to progress onto the M2 and be reasonably expected to achieve or do well on that assessment. So it's helping to prepare them for that and helping to reassure you as providers that they have the sufficient and correct experience and knowledge. There's a document there for you as well to complete, so you're not having to think this up out of your own minds. You can refer to the professional discussion recording form in the logbook. But please note, this is only for experienced workers, not for the apprentices who've come through a slightly different route. It is a discussion, so please don't look at this as being question and answer as such. A professional discussion is much more open. So there's a set of assessment criteria. You may ask or initiate discussion on a couple of topics. The learner will talk away and you may be able to record that discussion against each criteria, or you may do it in a logical sequence. It's whatever's suitable for you and the learner at that time. So we're not trying to be too prescriptive over how it's done, as long as it's a discussion, and at the end of that discussion, they've met all the assessment criteria. The sequence and the format may change slightly dependent on the learner, the candidate, the location, and so on. A couple of things I mentioned very briefly earlier, although you may have lost the slideshow at that point. Learners must also satisfy the following requirements to achieve the 234703 qualification. So there will be a check against the level 3 award in electrical installations against the British standards and the level 3 qualification in initial and periodic inspection and testing. So those qualifications are required to be achieved, and then you will claim a proxy, which I think we have on the next slide, which will ensure that you've checked that before claiming this qualification. These may be taken in advance, so they may have already achieved these, or they may be taken alongside the 2347, but must be completed before claiming certification on the 2347. So there's the proxies. So even though our learners achieve those, the full 2347 certificate will not be issued until you've claimed those relevant proxies. And you notice there's 3 proxies there. The 801 is for the level 2 diploma or equivalent. So that initial check that you've made with learners that they have that level 2 qualification will be claimed as a proxy. That means on an EQA visit, it will be part of the sampling plans. So on occasion, there'll be checks against those level 2 qualifications. So you'll need to take evidence of what the learner's achieved, and you'll need to claim a proxy to get the full certificate, and then a proxy for the other 2 qualifications we've mentioned. So hopefully that's relatively straightforward, but these are the type of things we can miss at the end of a program if we're not careful and the learner's achieved everything, but we've not claimed all the correct proxies and a certificate isn't issued. So approval, if your centre is approved to offer any of the following qualifications, so the 5357, the 5393 or the 2346, you'll be automatically approved for this 2347. However, what I would advise is you contact through email your EQA and your quality office, so quality@C&Gs.com, because even though it's automatic to be added, sometimes if one of our staff don't add it into the system, you won't see it. So it can be a manual add, but on your request. If you already have those, it'll be automatic. There'll be no work for you to do, but we'll have to make that physical addition in the system. So if you are going to run it, make sure you let us know and we'll make sure that it's added. If any problems with any of these things afterwards, you can always drop ourselves an email and we can refresh your memory, or we can forward details for you. It should only be a simple email. So that's everything for me for the moment. I will now hand you over to Bill to take you through the next few slides. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. If we could have the next slide, please, David. So David's really gone through things that you need to look at before you even start thinking about doing this assessment of competence. So it's really referring to the TESB Electrotechnical Skills Partnership website in order to just give an overview of the candidate that you're looking at to put through the qualification has the appropriate skills and background. You need to always refer to the awarding organisation's handbook. You know, it's one of those things within the handbook itself. It's got a lot of detail of what the requirements are for the candidate's eligibility. Carry out the skills scan. I mean, again, be extremely truthful. Get as much information as you can. That skills scan is there really to ensure that the person that's embarking on this route has the appropriate skills and underpinning knowledge and competency. A lot of people said, well, why is there an experienced worker assessment? Well, it was basically developed by the industry group comprising of the ECA, JIB, NET, Unite, Searchshore, ECS, NAPET, C&Gs, EAL and the IET, basically because they were aware that there are a lot of people out there that do not have a set standard of qualification. So this was developed in order to facilitate those people out there that maybe are part qualified, not qualified, and so on, to come up to the standard. It was also developed in line with the domestic electrician apprenticeship standard, so it's comparable with that. And I know in David's part of the presentation, he was saying that there are units within the experienced worker assessment that were near enough identical to what's contained within the apprenticeship standard route. Next slide, please, David. So the experienced worker routes, we call it the AM2DE, so it's the domestic experience one. It's designed by the industry to provide an assessment of competence and can be used to apply for an ECS card. So the NET AM2 series, it's not just another exam to pass, it's there to give an overview and showcase your skills. We try to simulate as much as possible a real working environment where we can, and it's done under controlled conditions as if you were working in that sort of environment. The assessment, as we said, mirrors the domestic electrician apprenticeship, and NET will be offering the assessment throughout England. We've got 2 centres currently under development and additional centres in the pipeline. So for 2024, there should be a reasonable amount of centres across the country that will be able to facilitate this assessment. Next slide, please. So David's already gone through the skills scan. The domestic experienced worker assessment is separate from the installation and maintenance. Now, there is an experienced worker route for installation and maintenance. This one is separate. So, you know, really go through the skills scan to make sure that you put the candidate on the appropriate experienced worker route. Now, from our perspective is that when you're actually ready, you've completed your qualification and you're ready to do the assessment, there are some key documents that we require to ensure that you're really ready to do the assessment. So what we're looking for is a copy of the Electrotechnical Indwellings qualifications. That's the C&Gs 2347, or in some cases the EAL equivalent. The NET readiness checklist. If you go onto our website, there will be a domestic electrician experienced worker checklist, which you'll be able to go through, and these actually give you the key points of what's going to be assessed within the assessment. We would also require page 1 of the skills scan from C&Gs or test website, which you can see on the little picture there. It's just the front page so that we can see that the due process has gone through, the skills scan has been conducted to ensure that the candidate is ready. And we also need a copy of that verified certificate at level 2 or possibly level 3 that really formed part of that discussion. So when this gateway has been approved and completed, it can be submitted to a net centre offering the assessment, and we've got looking at the timescale of you signing it off and taking your assessment in 6 months, because we know that things can drastically change. If you dig out a checklist that you did 18 months, 2 years ago, there may be some things that you have now got up to speed on, or other things have gone by the wayside. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it, lovely, thank you. Again, like we said, once your gateway has been approved, you've got 2 years to complete that assessment. We know pressures of work and other things. You just got to try and get this in as soon as you can. We also need to make sure that you're at least adequate in all the skill areas. Okay, so you don't have to be, fully conversant. As long as you're able to reach a certain level of competency, then that's fine. What we don't want to do is set you up to fail. So going through the checklist, being honest with yourself, looking at areas where you may need to do a little bit of extra training to improve your skills, then that will give you the basis really to get through the assessment with ease. So it's important, again, that your names are consistent across all of your materials, and it matches the ID that you present on the day. We've had various things of name changes. We have technical certificates in a slightly different name to your driving license and things like that. So you need to make sure that all your ID and all your certificates match. And if they don't, through circumstances, then a copy of a D-poll or something like that is required, just to ensure, because what we don't want to do at the end of the day is devalue this by having people sitting it for other people, and we just want it to be really truthful, and we want to have all the appropriate documents ready, and it makes life a lot easier. So there is a 10 working day gap between the gateway approval and the earliest date you can do the assessment. The reason for that is because once you've got it booked, you've still got that time that you can sort of like gear yourself up, pick up on any bits of knowledge that you need to do, and really sort of like focus that in 2 weeks' time, you've got that assessment. Next slide, please. So when you're ready, you've done your qualification and you're ready to do the assessment, you book directly with any NET centre. All the centres offering this assessment will be published on the NET website, and the length of time that it will be conducted over is approximately 3 days. Now, those of you that are aware of the AM2 currently, well, that's only 2 days. So what's involved with this one? Well, hopefully we'll give you a little bit of an outline. So the overall assessment is really split into 2 areas. There's a practical competence side, which does include installation and testing. And then there is an online knowledge assessment as well. So the assessment comprises of 7 sections, which will also include completing a risk assessment as well. Next slide, please. So the assessment itself, it basically comprises of a simulated domestic installation. You will actually be working to a specification. So again, just because you always install a particular cable, there are certain situations where you may need to use a different size or a different type of cable. So again, the specification, reading the specification is extremely important. There'll be a bathroom location, a garage type external installation, and there will also be part of the assessment is working at heights. So the practical installation is a single phase installation, and it's basically got a range of different circuit arrangements and accessories. Just to give you an overview from a point of view of length of time, whereas with the AM2 at the moment, we've got a 3-phase distribution board. What you have in this particular installation is that there are 2 customer consumer units. So you can already start to see the size of the actual installation itself. We also use a range of smart technologies. So there's things like you may find in any domestic premises these days with things like heating controls. We also have in there renewable energy devices because of the green aspect of the industry. There are renewable energy devices that are part and parcel of this installation. We've also got electric vehicle charging and safety circuits. So again, at the end of the assessment, it doesn't mean that you can confidently put in an electric vehicle charging point, but it does give you the demonstration of the type of circuit that you've got to actually physically install, and there are follow-on courses for EV charging. You'll also put in some containment, again, because containment, although in a lot of domestic installations, you think, well, where am I going to use conduit or trunking or tray? The rationale is that there are situations these days where you've got circuits running outside, so that sort of skill needs to be covered. And again, different from the current AM2 is that there is an extra book that you see there, and that's the Electrician's Guide to Building Regulations. So not only will you have BS 7671, Guidance Note 3, and on-site guide available as resources, but there will also be the use of the Guide to the Building Regs. Next slide, please.
Yeah, sorry, just a moment, Bill. I was trying to answer a couple of questions as you're delivering there, so apologies.
It's okay. So inspection and testing covers the whole installation with the use of Guidance Note 3 and will actually be split. So in the event of a candidate being unsuccessful, then we've split it down into the 2 consumer units. So it may well be that the internal installation was successful, but the external one wasn't. So it's split down, so that they can come back and just do that part of things. The other thing it will also include is safe isolation of all circuits, functional testing with completion of relevant certificates, and a little bit of a change from the current AM2, which is paper-based. We'll be using an electronic format for you to actually put in the results of your tests that you've actually carried out on the installation. Because we're quite aware that these days more and more people use software for their certification, so we're incorporating that into the assessment. The fault finding will replicate common faults that you'll come across in a domestic environment, and these need to be identified, and means of rectification need to be written down. But there will be no physical rectification required. So basically, there will be a fault installation where you'll do appropriate tests to find what the nature of the fault is, you identify it, and then give the appropriate action to rectify that condition. Following on from that, which is again a little bit different from the AM2 series, is condition reporting. You will see in David's requirements for the qualification that it was the full inspection and test certificate, which covered initial and condition reporting. So what we will have within the assessment is there are the candidate will need to identify various scenarios and apply the correct coding to a report. Next slide, please. So the online knowledge test will be a 40-question open book. Now, those of you that are aware of AM2, you'll know that with the exception of some health and safety questions, a majority of the knowledge assessment centers around BS 7671. For this one, we'll be centering it more around building regulations than BS 7671. So there'll be a smattering of health and safety, BS 7671 questions, and Electrician's Guide to the Building Regulations. Again, these will be open book, so the resources will be there ready for you to use. So again, it's getting yourself familiarized with those documents beforehand. The overall assessment will be graded fail or pass, and the results will be emailed out to you after 5 working days. This basically allows, when you've completed the assessment, the assessment that's got to be marked. We then go through and moderate those results to ensure that when you get the results, they are true. Certificates will be dispatched to the stated home address. So again, that's why I said right at the very beginning with your details, it's extremely important that your details are correct. As part of the assessment process, we do go through that, what you've uploaded, and before the assessment, we ask you to sign that the details above are correct. And that's so that we ensure that any certificates go out or any contact that we need to do to get in touch with you, we've got those addresses stated. Costs will be published at the end of December. We're just on the verge of confirming those. But what you've got to look at is that this will be a little bit more expensive than the current AM2s. And that's basically due to the length of time that you've got to do the assessment, because it's over 3 days. And of course, it's a slightly different concept, if you like, than what the current AM2 is at present. Next slide, please. So from that perspective, we will be looking at a bridging assessment. So any of those people that come through the domestic electrician route that now want to then spread their wings to become conversant with installation and maintenance, we will be putting in a bridging assessment in order to move them from a domestic electrician to a installation and maintenance electrician. From that point of view, there may well be additional qualifications and courses that you may need to do in order to pick up on underpinning knowledge, such as more three-phase detail and perhaps some science. But from our perspective as the assessment organisation, we will actually be looking at a bridging assessment to cover the gap between the AM2D and AM2DE and the AM2E. Support materials are currently being developed at the moment, and they'll be available on the NET website. And the first 2 centres that should be operational at the beginning of 2024, there should be one in London and one in the west of England. So that is our first 2, but we're currently under sort of like talks with various centres around the country in order to provide the AM2 domestic assessment. This may not be traditional AM2 centres. There may be additional ones that are going to come in to purely do domestic. And again, if you go onto our website, we've already got a fantastic little app for inspection and testing. There are some top tips. Predominantly they apply to the AM2 and AM2S, but there will be additional ones that will be put in there to support the AM2D. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill. I've been trying to have a look at some of the questions as we work through. So there's a couple I've given brief replies to, I'll try and expand on in a moment, and there's a couple for yourself. So we'll come to those very shortly, because there's just a couple of slides left on some of the support materials that we have. So again, you may be familiar with these, but we now have digital credentials against pretty much all of our qualifications. These are free of charge. They just require the learner's details and email address when you register on our walled garden system, and we can issue these free digital credentials. There's a link on this slide, so you get that from the download, which takes you to the screen and gives you a lot more information. But these have data within them, so you can click and see the data behind them about what the course was. They can be shared on social media, and they can be shared on learners' CVs. So they're a very quick and easy way of sharing that information, a lot more modern way and digital compared to paper certificates. So worth checking out if you don't use those currently, and ask your learners to be sharing them on social media. It will help things like LinkedIn. It can help promote themselves. There's a range of books through Hodder Education. There's a new email address there, tom.randall@hoddereducation.co.uk. So if you're looking for any of these books or want to make any orders, it's worth dropping Tom an email. When you go onto the Hodder website, you will see against a lot of these textbooks an opportunity to request an inspection copy. So if you don't have any of these or you don't have the updated version, worth going to the website and requesting a inspection copy. So they've been updated recently. There's also brand new textbooks for the 8202, and we also have Qualification Wales books, and we also have T-levels for the specialisms and for the course. So there's a lot of very good information and books available. I would recommend everyone to get in touch with Tom or through Hodder and make the request to view some of those. I should have mentioned as well that there's ebooks available. That's the eBoost. So if again, if you go on the website, you'll see further information about those. We also have a new BSE video channel. So when we record the webinars, they're held in GoToWebinar. You can access them that way, but we upload them to our own YouTube channel as well. So there's a couple of screenshots there showing you our BSE YouTube channel on the screen. Our most recent one, now superseded by this, was our qualification reforms video, which we did last month. So if you haven't seen that and your curriculum planning, it's well worth a review over that recording. So I think this is the final slide, just a call out really to show associate vacancies. So if anyone has interest in working with us, there's a number of roles for associates at C&Gs. So exam auditors, moderators, T-level roles, EQAs, examiners, and so on. There's a link here. If you're interested in those roles, please go to that link, and there's a number of applications. They're each different departments, so they often require a different application in each department, depending on which you're interested in. So if you're interested in all of them, you might have to click on all of the links, but you hopefully be able to copy and paste a lot of the information across. So stay updated. This is a slightly updated slide actually. So the email update registration link. So if you're not receiving alerts, please register for alerts on the website. There's an extra update form for information on technicals and T-levels. So again, if you've not registered for those, please email us outside of this webinar and we'll send you the correct links and put you in touch with the right people and so on to get involved with those, particularly T-levels. It's been the funded provision for level 3 next academic year. So that's an important one to get on board with. We also have a LinkedIn group. Follow us on LinkedIn, but we also have dedicated groups for things such as QW, T-levels and technicals. So that's the end of the slideshow, and apologies about the mishap at the start there where you lost the slides for a brief moment, but hopefully we got you back on board and you were able to view that. And you can download the presentation yourselves as well. So what I'm going to do now is just pause for a moment whilst I open up the questions and hopefully start working through some of these questions. So a lot of them reminded me about the slides, so hopefully we've covered that. The query about the EQAs, are they on board with the evidence requirements of the logbook? Yeah, we're in frequent updates with our EQAs, and we run a minimum of a couple of standardisation meetings and events every year, and we bring everyone into the same room every year. So often that's kept them up to date. If you feel if not everyone is up to date with things, then please drop us an email, and if you've got any queries on things like the logbooks or any disagreements, then it may just require some clarity or misunderstanding. That's often the case if there's an issue. So don't hesitate to contact us and get in touch about any issues that you may see. Okay, so is domestic electrician qualification acceptable on this route? We'd have to check against that list in the skills scan. So it really depends on which qualifications a learner has to which are suitable and which are not. The check would be on that skills scan. So there's a big list of the qualifications that are allowed. So as part of that process, go to that page and check across those. Can you confirm where these two centres that offer AM2D are, please? I'm not sure if you're able to do that, Bill.
Yeah, I just popped it in the chat, but perhaps I haven't. It's basically at the moment the proposed centres are Yeovil in Somerset and Harlow in Essex will probably be the first two, but we will confirm that early 2024.
Thank you very much, Bill. Do qualifications need to be within 5 years? So maybe getting mixed up with a couple of things here. There is a 5-year rule on exemption of assessment for things like the 5357 and so on. And that's because a learner through that route will be getting a new certificate that says they've met all the requirements of that most recent certificate. So the rules on exemption are quite tight, and there's a lot of mapping needs to be done by ourselves, and we need to make sure they're current. And 5 years is the oldest that could be for currency. Because this is entry requirements to a qualification, and then you're assessed on the qualification, it's looked upon slightly differently. But we'd expect the knowledge to be current, and the way of checking that is through the skill scan. So it's, you know, the qualification initially isn't the only thing. You have the skill scan and the discussion to confirm a lot of that information. So two slightly different things, but I can see why they would be mixed up. We don't run the 5357 in Wales on the 2357. That's a really good point. I assume that's just an omission on the automatic approval, but I'll make those checks and request that added. But if you're looking to run this now, please send an email into quality, copy myself in, and I'll help smooth that over as part of your application. So hopefully it won't delay anything if you're looking to run it. The password on the logbook, yeah, when the new logbook came in, we put a new password against it, and there was a delay in us updating it on the wall garden. That was done, I believe, yesterday or the day before. So hopefully the password now in the wall garden will work for you. It should be up to date. Again, any issues, just drop us an email, and hopefully we can smooth it over and check that out. AM2 centres we've covered. AM2D checklist, when will that be available? A question for Bill. I don't know if you've covered that in the slide, sorry.
Yeah, no, we've already sort of like sketched it out. It should be available on the website at the start of 2024.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you. So quite a few questions around when the level 2 qualification needs to be sat. So the typical learner would be a learner coming to a college, completed a level 2 technical certificate, gone out to site, and then gained some experience on site, and then after a number of years started working as a domestic electrician. In which case you'd see a natural progression from the level 2 to on-site, still training, but on-site in that environment until they're then operating as a domestic electrician. So it could be a number of years afterwards when they were deemed suitable. There may be occasions when people have experience on site, start working, and then do a level 2 after that. It's less likely because there's less of a driver to do the level 2 up until now, when now it's an entry requirement for this experienced work route. I don't see an issue if someone has the experience, the valid, correct experience, and needs the level 2 to enter this because this is their goal. But I would be extra vigilant on that it's not someone who's over suggesting what experience and skills they do have. So there'll be additional vigilance from yourselves and from ourselves and from NET, I suspect, that it's not someone just rushed through. In either case, it must come before registration on the experienced work route. Now, I'm not sure, Bill, if you see it any differently, or are you comfortable with that as guidance?
No, I think that's okay. That's spot on, David. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have to use a C&Gs logbook, or can we use an online portfolio such as OneFile? Yeah, no problem. You can use your own documents. It's just sometimes a bit easier because we've been through all the assessment criteria and we've put in the logbook what we see as being appropriate approaches to meeting that evidence. You know, things like the supporting evidence in photographs. Sometimes we'll leave a gap for, say, 4 or 5 photographs against a specific criteria. You wouldn't naturally get that if you're using your own. but it's not that you can't use your own. That's fine. It just sometimes make it a little bit more difficult for your assessors. In some cases, some centres will have access to our logbook whilst also using their own digital version. So it just helps guide them into sort of amounts and types of evidence. So yeah, it's not a problem, but it may be worth referring to our logbook for some support with that. Are all the correct cable sizes going to be present so that the spec can be followed? We've had reports that cable reels are not readily available, so apprentices are failing for not following the spec. I'm not entirely sure what is that referring to. Something to do with yourselves, Bill, or because I can't think of anything on.
I've got a funny feeling that that's something to do with current AM2Ss. All cables should be available in all centres. If candidates are having issues with not having cable available, then they should get in contact with NET. But yeah, I mean, there will be a range of cables available for the installation. There will also be a range of components available for the installation. And what we would say as well, within that range, there may be things that aren't suitable. There should be a complete range. And if anybody's having any difficulty at any AM2 centre that aren't having the components available, then please do get in touch with NET.
Thank you very much, Bill. My colleagues just joined me, Rob, who's also supporting me some of these questions. Rob?
Yeah, so we've got another one there. Would a 239495 be acceptable, or do they need the current 239152? I think what we've got to appreciate with this is when you claim that proxy for that inspection and test qualification as an organisation, you are certificating that learner and assuring that knowledge and skills is still current. So if there's any doubt that knowledge and skills are not current, that should be carried out as part of the skills scan and the initial assessment of that learner. And if there's any doubt that they may have completed a qualification quite a while ago or anything like that, then potentially you might wish to, as a centre, put them through that assessment again to validate that that knowledge and skills is still current. Basically, you're claiming a new inspection and test certificate when you claim that proxy. So by doing that, you need to validate that that knowledge is still current as a centre before you claim the proxy.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you. A query on update bridging between two qualifications. Will this reflect the extra experience required before registering on the qual, i.e. 3 to 5 years? Sorry, I'm struggling to know which one that's referring to. Apologies. If you can type that out again, I might probably me missing the point, but if you're okay typing that out again so I understand it, or unless any colleagues are reading it differently, or if I don't manage to answer it on this webinar, please do email me and we can have a chat outside so I answer it correctly. I just don't want to guess an answer if I don't quite understand the point enough. Apologies about that. With the background form, any issues with candidate working as a self-employed and leaving employer details section empty? It would probably be a bit of a red flag, because if they're operating outside of a separate employer and they're not qualified, where's that experience come from? Who's validating the work is up to date, and who's registering the work. So it's unlikely that someone will be doing much domestic work without qualifications and without working for an employer. And if they have done, I suspect it's very rare. And for me as an assessor, it would be a warning sign. So I would do a lot more digging. So that in itself would make me a little bit nervous. If that came through to you, I would then dig a little bit further, and they'd need to validate a bit more than just that. So it's not some of these things aren't a straight yes or no answer. It's probably leaning towards no at this stage, but there may be more details that you can get from that candidate that reassures you. Can you use the 236? So I don't have the list in front of me, apologies, because I've got this slide showing the presentation on the screen, and I can't remember if that was on that list. But it's, again, my advice, whenever a qualification comes in, the first thing I would do is open the skill scan, go to that list, and that's your go-to really with all of those queries. If in doubt, if it's not there, it's probably not accepted, because I know they've been very critical and detailed when looking at that list. By all means, contact ourselves or TESP or NET for some further checks, but I suspect it would be a no if it's not on that list.
Just on that, David, I think we've had similar queries for some other qualifications, potentially maybe very historical qualifications, etc. And if it's not on the list and you feel it is still equivalent to a level 2 entry requirement, then it's going to be, unfortunately, pushing that back to the centre to do some kind of mapping activity to align the qualifications the learner holds to current level 2 equivalencies. Obviously, if it is a very historical qualification, again, we go back to the issue of, well, you're still signing off to say those knowledge and skills are still current within that skill scan. So have they been carrying out work in the industry? Have they been keeping that knowledge and skills up to date? Because by claiming that level 2 proxy, again, you're basically giving them a new certification date for that knowledge and skills. So again, unfortunately, some of this does go back to this initial assessment and the skill scan of the learner, and potentially mapping other qualifications into the level 2 to show alignment. I think we've got one there regarding 2394 and 2395. Is this relating as qualifications acceptable as a prerequisite for the 2347? I would imagine that means. So yeah, well, it's not. I think the prerequisite is the level 2 qualification. If they hold potentially a 239495 and you believe the knowledge and skills are still current, then that doesn't have to be repeated on program with regarding an up-to-date inspection and testing qualification. That could be just claimed as the proxy, which is set up in Walled Garden. But if you've any doubt that the knowledge and skills are not current, you can get them to out that inspection and test qualification again. But the inspection and test is not a prerequisite. It can be the experienced worker route. It's a prerequisite. The inspection and test and the regs unit can be carried out on program whilst they're building the portfolio and whilst they're carrying out the completion of the experienced worker assessment to get them to gateway before AM2.
Thanks. Some feedback around the use of observation, professional discussions as primary methods. Good methods of assessment. My IQA or EQA just be careful that you're supplementing those with other assessment methods, and it's just not those, and just make sure you meet the rules on face-to-face assessments and so on. Oh, okay, so Walled Garden's down, it appears. Apologies, I've not been on it myself this morning. They're hoping it's back on by midday. So yeah, thanks for that. So regarding those passwords that have been updated, if you've not got the most recent ones yet, hopefully by this afternoon you'll be able to access those most recent ones and open up the logbook. And hopefully you find it very useful. There's been a lot of effort into try and get the right balance for the candidate and yourselves. And you know, the feedback so far has been good. So hopefully you all have that same experience. Okay, someone's saying that our sound has gone. I'm not sure if that's the same for everyone.
The question just dropped in for yourself, Bill. Will the AM2 and AM2S/E be updated to reflect the longer duration of the AM2E stroke DE and EV stroke smart technologies?
Yep, I mean, everybody's aware or should be aware that there was a revision of the electrician standard in September. We're in the process of redeveloping the AM2S. So again, some of the technologies and methodology that is being used in the domestic route will be reflected in the revised AM2S. So again, I mean, the AM2 has been around for a long period of time. It's due for a refresh. The AM2S revision has given that opportunity, and of course that will then be reflected across in the AM2E. So yes, I mean, the smart technologies and the electronic format of sort of like recording results, because it's sort of like day-to-day, those will be incorporated in the future within those other assessments. Just like to take the opportunity, if there are people out there that are interested in becoming a domestic centre to run these assessments, then by all means email into NET.
Thanks very much, Bill. I've just noticed we've run over, but that's fine. Everyone, from looking at the attendees, everyone stayed on, so hopefully you found it valuable and answering some of these questions have been helpful. We'll not keep you too long because the questions do seem to have dried up a little bit. So just to say, really, just a big thanks for you for attending. I know how busy everyone is, so it's difficult to get onto these. So thanks for coming along and asking some really good questions and for your engagement with this. Any follow-up, please let us know. There will be a short survey as well, follows this through GoToWebinar. Please take a few moments just to put down your feedback there. It's massively helpful to us. We do read all of the comments and take on board your feedback, and we use that when we're reviewing the support that we offer and any potential changes. So it is information that is used. And as we're almost at Christmas, it's a great opportunity to wish everyone the very best for Christmas and New Year, and take the opportunity to have a downtime away from work. It does dominate a lot of our lives, so it's great to have some good quality time away from work. So happy holidays to everyone. Are there any final thoughts or comments, Bill or Rob, that you'd like to add before we officially close?
No, thank you for giving NET the opportunity to sort of like give an overview of the assessment, and yeah, wish everybody that's on today a good Christmas break, and look forward to 2024.
You're more than welcome, Bill. It's excellent working alongside you. Always a pleasure. So yeah, once again, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we hope to see you all very soon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.